Welcome to the Christian Capitalist Podcast, everybody, where the more we make, the more we give. We're excited to be joined today by Jojo Gallagher, a missionary with Young Life in Boulder, Colorado, the labor field of Boulder, Colorado, as he likes to say. We're so glad to be joined by Jojo and talk about his ministry, how he is impacting the young people of his community and spreading the good news, and how we can help him do the same. As you know, the Christian Capitalist Podcast focuses on the twin themes of hard work and generous giving to the poor and needy. Follow us on this podcast episode on all the social media channels, and everywhere you see a social media post from us, you'll likewise find our website where you can get more information about our movement, including the Christian Capitalist College Clubs, which are starting this fall, and of course a link to Amazon so you can buy a book in any of the three forms that you like: paperback, ebook, through Kindle, or audiobook. But for now, let's talk with Jojo about his ministry. Good morning, Jojo.
Good morning, Rich. Happy to be here.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
And I see the sun shining brightly in Boulder today.
Yes, we have no shortage. And being a fair-skinned man, I'm inside, luckily for the moment. So it's quite a sunny state. So
I love that. Well, I have heard my dad was career Air Force, and when I was very young, 3, 4, 5 years older, we lived in Aurora, Colorado, and my parents are originally from Alabama, and it struck them that the only month it didn't snow when we lived there was July. So how's it in Boulder? Has it snowed in July?
It has not, but the snow is staying. The snow still stays on the Rockies. It hides in the little coulars, so it still looks like a winter wonderland depending where you go. I just went up to Brainerd Lake, which is in Indian Peaks, and I was there on a little fly fishing trip, and I was walking past massive snowbanks when it was like just 30 minutes prior, it was 90 degrees and just
Wow.
like blazing UV. So yeah, the elevation, just if you go anywhere above like 10,000 feet, you'll probably find a snow patch almost year round.
Isn't
So,
that cool?
but nothing's dumping today. No July skiing at the moment in the foothills of Boulder.
I love it. And hopefully no wildfires. That's the other thing about the summertime in Colorado, right?
We fingers crossed. I think we're doing all right now. Every now and then we had a large fire back in 2021, and it just had everybody alert, always looking to the skyline to see if there's any plume, because I was driving towards it was Superior, Colorado, and I just saw this giant stack of smoke. I'm like, well, and I just had to U-turn in the middle of the highway. I'm like, going back home now. So
exactly.
It's just it depends, and people are like, oh, there's a wildfire 20 miles away, whatever it is. Like, that happens. Yeah, that's a whole topic. Nothing to do with the Christian Capitalist Podcast. I love talking about wildfires in Boulder. So it's maybe for another podcast.
Right. Another time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Jojo, how long have you lived in Boulder? It sounds like you love it.
I've lived in Boulder since May of 2021, so about 4 years. That's what I've been telling people, 4 years. And I moved here after graduating from Liberty University with a youth ministry degree. And I moved to Boulder because I wanted to move to Boulder. Like, not because I wanted the rock climbing, not because I wanted the, new tech industry that's blowing up here. I wanted to come here because I had an understanding that we need to go to the least church places in the country. And so many of my friends were like, I need to go to Africa. I need to go to Europe. I need to go to all these places all over the world. But I just had this prompting inside of me. I'm like, but there's still so many places right here in the United States that does not have access to the gospel as much as it would be in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I went to college. And I was meeting with a friend, and we were just having this conversation, like, what are the least church places in the country? And at the time, and I'm pretty sure it's still true to this day, that Boulder, Colorado is the second least church city in the United States, right behind Burlington, Vermont. So coin flip said, go to Boulder. So yeah.
Isn't that something? And so you picked up and moved. What an adventure as a young man graduating from Liberty. And I'm going to make a note about Burlington, Vermont, because both of those places,
Hmm.
isn't that interesting? Burlington, Vermont, and Boulder, Colorado, are both beautiful uh,
Yeah.
in terms of geography, right? And
Yeah.
just the land. And that's something.
Yeah.
So when you got to Boulder, how were you received? I can't help but think of Jesus. We just read this we're in a lectionary church in the Episcopal Church. So the
Hmm.
Catholics, the Lutherans, the
Hmm.
Episcopal folks use this common lectionary. And just a couple of weeks ago, Jesus sent out the 70 and said, "Don't take
Hmm.
anything with you, but when you go to a town and you're welcome to stay in one house, when you're not, shake the
Hmm.
dust from your sandals and say, the kingdom of God has come near you." So, how were
Yeah.
you received in Boulder when you got there as a young man 4 years ago?
That was such a fun time because I had such a crazy momentum coming out of college. Like I just wanted to take the bull by the horns, and I was like, Billy Graham revival starting in 2 weeks. I'm getting there. We're gonna have I was just like so green and ready, and I was 22 years old uh when I came out here, and I thought I was gonna change Boulder overnight. So when I came out, I specifically came and partnered with the church because my first desire to come to Boulder was if there's no churches there, we need to plant churches.
Right.
So it was I wanted to partner and network with any Christian that was in Boulder that had a desire to plant churches as well. So I partnered with a church in downtown Boulder. I went there for an internship to complete my degree for youth ministry, and they were preparing to make me the next church plant resident for uh, their church to plant in Boulder. Uh, so when I was coming, weirdly, I was just ducking my head, and my only thought was, I need to plant this church. So I was only really networking with Christians, and I didn't really have a plan. I didn't have any understanding. I'm like, I need to meet anybody and everybody that will help me reach this ultimate goal of planting a church. And it took
Mhm.
about a year for me to be in Boulder and built a lot of relationships. I started working in a coffee shop where I actually met my wife, which is
Oh,
very
cool.
funny. Another, it was very funny. You leave a conservative Christian college and you don't meet your wife there. You just think all hope is lost. Like if I didn't meet her there, nowhere then. Then I met a wonderful Jesus loving woman in a random coffee shop in downtown Boulder, and it worked out pretty well for me.
Isn't that
But
awesome?
I had,
Jojo,
yeah.
I want to interrupt just real quick because I always tell folks there's no such thing as coincidence in life. It's the Holy Spirit at work.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he knew I needed her because it was like he just crashed us both in the same place, and we just had to find each other. It was pretty awesome. But so essentially, like I worked in all these different areas. I worked as a barista. I worked as a bartender. I worked in retail. Because I recognized after my first year that I have no idea what the community in Boulder is actually like. I had this vision of planning a church, and I wasn't really interacting with the community. I just had this like super like tunnel vision idea of like this objective of planning a church and being a pastor of a church, but I didn't know what it was like to even be a community member. So I started uh, yeah, just working in these random shops and meeting community members and introducing myself and sharing my faith. And you would be surprised, even in an unchurched place like Boulder, people are unbelievably curious about what your truth is. Like
Hmm.
they're like, why are you the person that you are today? And I tell them like, because Jesus changed my life, and I have no other way I could possibly live. And they're like, oh, that's
Wow.
cool. And they're like, I like crystals. And I'm like, all right, sweet. Yeah, we just like so there was never really like animosity towards me. No one ever There was a couple situations where people were just like angry that I like had this absolute truth where we talked about absolute truth, and I'm like, this is the way, the truth of the life. Like
Right.
this is the ultimate truth. They'll get upset, but it's a super passive town that won't really like storm you out. They might write a mean post about you online. They might try to like the Facebook mom group chats do not like Young Life, and they'll never
Oh,
say anything to your face, but they'll go to the internet and they'll try to cut you down in those places.
Oh,
But overall, like coming to Boulder, like it has been the most receptive uh town to me just telling them, hey, like I know you might not believe in this, but how about you come and see how good this could really be? So long story short, the reception in Boulder is has actually been very, very sweet to me. But there's a lot of passivity that will be like with barriers around what they're actually willing to partake in, what they're willing to show up in, what they're willing to actually be like introspective for themselves. Like, what does this mean for me? I know what it means for you, but what does it mean for me? So I hope that answers your
it
question
does.
on the
It does,
reception.
but it's also got me intrigued, given that there's not a much, going back to the '70s and people taking the good news
Mhm.
out into the world. It doesn't sound like you were greeted with hostility, but
Mhm.
instead this kind of passive, that's okay for you, but not okay for me. Do you
Mhm.
think that's the underlying reason why it's one of the least churched communities in America?
I have a couple of thoughts and theories that I've bounced around. I had a
Yeah,
really
it's been 4
wise
years.
past yeah. I have a really wise pastor um that is currently in Arvada, Colorado, and he essentially showed me this timeline of what Christian culture is over the grand scheme. Like it's a four-step thing to where it's a progressive timeline that you see over history, where it
Mhm.
starts with a uh, I'm totally gonna mess this up, but hey,
That's all right.
we'll get the base of it. So
Yeah.
essentially, there is uh, pre-Christian societies, like basically societies that are being prepared as they're being receptive to Christianity. And that transitions into a Christian society, something that some people would debate that the United States was a Christian society. Like it is a Christian society when it was like at its start. A couple riffles, whether there's different movements in the 1900s that shifted that. But then after a Christian society, it goes into a post-Christian society to where society essentially says we are beyond Christian faith. We want something beyond. We want a different truth. We want a different foundation. We do not need Christianity. And then after post-Christian society, it turns into a pagan society, a godless society.
Wow.
And there's a huge debate with Boulder that it's not simply a post-Christian society. Like if you are in a post-Christian society, uh, people would say like, oh, Boulder has different gods, different things that they want to worship, different things that they want to elevate to a scale of like lordship, and people will say like fitness. They'll say like even some things of like crystals and like other types of spirituality and dark spiritualities. Uh, Universalism, like all truths are true. That's like something that is very common in Boulder to see a universalist church where
Mm.
they're past Christianity and they want like universal truth. But people have been debating currently that Boulder has entered into a pagan society to where essentially it's just a godless society.
Yeah.
There is no hope, there is no God, there is none of these things that really uh, that give any sort of framework for what your worldview is built on. It really is interesting. But the beauty of it with a pagan society, which I am hoping and praying that is transitioning, is after a pagan society, that transitions you into a pre-Christian
Yeah.
society
Yeah.
that is more open to a new truth that, hey, like living a pagan life is not a good life. To not have any truth, any purpose, any type of like higher purpose and power that guides you, a lot of people are becoming really like receptive to Christianity. So I believe that Boulder right now is in the process, optimism right here, process of becoming a pre-Christian society. So that's where when I get to encounter all these people that they are actually more receptive to me, I think there actually is a preparing as a pagan society entering a new leaf, a new life of of a pre-Christian society, and hopefully one day uh, a Christian society once again. So
Jojo,
that's a
I'm sorry for interrupting. I love your
yeah,
optimism.
no.
And listen, when we as Christians, especially those who are Christian leaders, talk about how to approach people who are spiritual but not religious, right?
Mhm.
What does that look like in a town like Boulder, where you may have a lot of that? I mean, spiritualism based on universalism, or based on crystals, or
Yeah,
peyote, who knows what, right? So how do you
yeah,
how do you tackle that?
yeah, yeah. Spirituality is such a contagious thing because it's essentially a desire to experience the spiritual realm with no authority.
Hmm.
And with spirituality, there's so many realms that you can go, and this is not something that only uh, is people like out in the woods smoking dope. This isn't just people that are charging their crystals in the moonlight, or just like doing these like lunar farming patterns that really that they think is like helpful for them. But it's also something that I've seen spirituality in the Christian community as well, because the biggest danger to any type of like spiritual pursuit is not submitting yourself under an authority that will actually guide you to the straight and
Hmm.
narrow, to the path that Jesus intended for us. Uh, so essentially, like there's little desire for a higher power to say this is my authority. Like if you wanted to uh talk to like if you want to talk specifically about the Christian authority, like the Christian spirituality, where it's like I'm spiritual, I go to church. uh there's little desire to actually allow Jesus to be king of your life. uh and that's something that I recognize that is very common in Boulder, especially in the spirituality realm. Universalism is basically like where I was speaking about, those Universalist church, and something that's very prominent in Boulder. It's essentially a way to cancel out all authorities. Like if
Hmm.
all truths are true, then there's no true authority that leads my life. Like one day I could salad bar pick a little bit of Christianity because I like how Jesus, reaches to the least of these, and I like how he serves. But also, like, I really want to try a little bit of like Hinduism, to where I could really see like all the gods in the different parts of the world, and like the god of the meadow, and the god of the trees, and the god of the sky. And then at the end of the day, when you don't have an answer for something, like, man, actually I kind of like the idea of like atheism, where it's like I don't want to have to answer this question, so I'm just going to say like there's nothing here.
Right.
Like there's
Whatever.
nothing we can do to explain. So this whole spiritual thing, in my theory, is that it is the lack of the desire to have authority and also responsibility for yourself. uh,
Hmm.
and that's something that, especially in young life, like that's the greatest thing that we hope to mentor into kids, is one, us being adults that enter young people's lives, and to be a mentor that is technically like an authority figure. And we get to teach and show kids specifically what it looks like to delight in a creator that loves us so much, that for us to say he is our king, and he is who guides us, and he is the one that uh, shows us the way, and we cannot go another day without him. That's very foreign for a lot of kids, but they get to see it modeled through us, of like, hey, this is the thing that I've built my life on. This is the thing that will guide me forever and that will never forsake me. Uh, so as we're like trying to teach this, like this is one of our really big desires for Young Life, is to actually show that this life of authority, this life of responsibility in the calling of following King Jesus, is not a burden, not a throwing away of any type of freedom, but it's actually embracing the greatest freedom that you could ever have. And you just need to come and see how sweet it is, because we're living it out right in front of you. So
Right
that's
on.
the yeah.
I love that. Well, and one of the core principles of the Christian capitalist is to lead by example. You know, we haven't mentioned the word yet, but as we're talking about it, especially in the context of young life and teaching people about Jesus, it's love and love of neighbor. You know,
Mhm.
As you mention all these different, I would have to say philosophies of spiritual life. I can't help but think about the two kind of the core principles of our movement: are hard work and generous giving to the poor and
Mhm.
needy in the name of Jesus. And that the way that we kind of start that conversation in the Old Testament is that the first thing we know about God is that He works, right? There in the first few
Yeah.
verses of Genesis, he creates the heavens and the earth, and he creates us, and he makes us in his image. So if he works, we know we're made to work. The
Mhm.
second is, of course, we know he gives. He gave us life. He
Mhm.
gave the people of Israel freedom and food and water while they wandered in the wilderness. And then, of course, his greatest gift is Jesus, his son. When you
Mhm.
talk to folks about these kind of spiritual issues, about where did we come from, what kind of answers do you get? Because I love the notion of focusing on authority, but it's also like, when you talk to people who have that little foundation, where do they think this interest in work and this interest in generosity might come from if it's not from God?
Yeah. A lot of it is just a that's a really, really good question. When I think about a lot of kids that are in Boulder, they're very driven. Actually, they really love the idea of work. A lot of
Hmm.
kids are either kids of uh, tech startups, just very successful families, generational businesses, uh, and these kids have these ideas. I have the joy of being a substitute teacher at my local middle school, where I get to
Oh,
ask a
cool.
lot of these questions to kids, like what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do one day? You're in seventh grade, like. If everything worked out perfectly, what would you want to do? And a lot of them say, I want to take over my mom's business or my dad's business.
Hmm.
And there's also kids from lower socioeconomic places where it's like, I want to work with my dad as a landscaper. I want to go and become a chef. I want to go and be where my dad is. And the common theme that I've seen with these kids and what they want to do, except for the kids that want to be like streamers, because that's like really fun. They want to play video
Right.
games
Or
for a living.
influencer.
And yeah. There's a couple springing there in there, but I see a grand majority of kids saying like, I want to be what my parents showed me work is. So
Mm,
a lot of these kids don't really know that work came from a higher authorship, that God intended for us to use our bodies to His glory in the way that we work. Like they never really saw that, but it was ingrained in them by their parents that it's my job to be successful, so I want to go and work as hard as I can to achieve this identity of good enough, successful enough, provided for enough. And that's something that's really just being passed down from generation to generation, to where the motive of work has really lost its purpose separate from, I need to be successful enough. I need to be all these things that I can create myself. So when
mm,
kids talk to me about that, a lot of the things that I try to explain when it comes to purpose and talks about like what God intended for our lives was never really about this self-made image of, I can build my identity. Whenever I tell people about creation and what God intended for us, is that God put us on this earth to delight in Him, to love Him, to experience Him in a just awe-filled way. And when work is a part of that, that we are using our bodies that God has given us to delight in all the blessings that He's afforded us. So, like, obviously, like, work when it was first intended, like, there was no sweat on our brow. Like, before sin entered the world, like, work was like, man, we get to delight in this body, this gift that God has given us. And we get to experience that redemption today. But kids don't really connect work to delight in the Lord.
yeah. Yeah.
They don't really connect. So like when I'm teaching kids about purpose, I'm like, you you can't fulfill yourself through work. You fulfill yourself through knowing that you are priceless, that God has blessed you beyond imagine, and that He wants to be in relationship with you, and He wants to bless you through your hands, through your feet, through your mind, through your eyes, and how you get to go and interact with Him in this world. uh, whether it's through your work, whether it's through your play, whether it's through your meditation, whether it's through eating, whatever it is, that God gave us these bodies not to be our source of fulfillment, but an avenue to where we get to experience blessing, uh, because He ultimately has already fulfilled us before we did anything. Uh,
Yeah, that's beautiful. What a poetic way to put it. And so, speaking of experiencing the blessing through work, your role as a missionary in young life, many people would look at as one of service, right? And including me. You're providing a service, and you are working hard by giving to others. As you're working, how do you feel blessed in helping these young people understand the gospel?
uh, uh, Ironically, like this, this is a really fun question about this is the most fulfilling job I've ever like probably not fulfilling. Let's say like this is the most rewarding job I've ever had in my life. Being a young life staff associate, boots on the ground field worker. That is and the reason why it's so fulfilling is because it truly is it's not dependent on your praise or your thanks because a middle schooler is not going to thank you today for picking them up and taking them to ice cream. They they don't understand what is happening in the moment of you developing relationships with a young person, uh, about the desires and the ways that you just treasure them so much that they are worthy of just being pursued and being shown the gospel through your words and your actions. Like it's a pretty thankless job in the moment. But the thing that keeps me going is not the thanks from kids or the thanks from parents or the pats on the back from donors. The thing that keeps me going is the understanding that I'm participating in a harvest that I may never see.
Mm.
Uh, I'm participating in work just like Jesus did, to where he went to the farthest out people, extended a hand, even though they never knew that they're in the presence of the living God, uh, and that they get to meet life everlasting face to face, even though they may never see it in that moment. And that's the thing that keeps me going, getting out of bed, going to the middle school to volunteer for lunch monitoring or hall monitoring or being a part of a coaching team. It's what gets me out of bed to go and invest into other volunteers that are just as tired and weary from the thanklessness of the job, and just reminding us day in and day out that we are the most close to being like Jesus' ministry,
Yeah,
even though we might never get thanked for it,
yeah.
even though we might never get a plaque for it or a big pay raise for it. Uh, we get to be the hands and feet of Jesus actively because we are the people that are going to the farthest person who may never think that they're worth hearing the gospel, and then we get to go and share it to them right to their face.
Well, and it's
And
so
that's the
funny
thing
you say
that, yeah,
it
yeah,
keeps you
go ahead.
going. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I got to tell you,
No.
as you're talking, I think of all these stories in the Gospels of Jesus teaching the kids and telling everybody else, "Hey, focus on them. These are the future of the kingdom of heaven."
Yeah.
How does what Jesus, now that you are the hands and feet of Jesus in dealing with the kids in Boulder and that area, how does what he said in the Gospels inform you in your work?
Yeah, that's such a fun idea because it's something that's driven me for a while. I don't know if I'll be a lifelong youth minister, but I kind of hope I am. Uh, a lot of people use youth ministry as a stepping stone, but I think this is the place that God has intended for me to be, is working with kids, because I think about when people were bringing their kids to Jesus and the disciples were trying to shoo them away, and Jesus was
Yeah.
saying, "Whoever welcomes one like this welcomes me." Uh, and I think about that often, and that is the idea that most people in the church have about kids, that they're lesser, that they are a future problem, not a current problem. So like
Hmm.
we'll talk to them when they can finally participate in communion and all, like, sing in the pews and not be loud. Uh, But Jesus reminded us in his inverse kingdom that the least of these are the people that he delights in the most, and whoever welcomes the least of these welcomes him. Uh, Whoever is first is last, whoever is last is first. And when I look at these kids in Boulder, that these kids that have been considered nuisances, not yet of value to society, someone that is, less desirable. Like people tell me all the time, especially middle school, even middle school to high school, they can't even drive themselves anywhere. You have to go pick them up.
Right.
They are the hardest ministry to do because they are so vulnerable, so awkward, so just told that they are not cool enough, pretty enough, whatever it is. And when I
Right.
look at them, I'm like, wow, this is who Jesus wanted to welcome into his arms. The person that has been told their entire, like, since they were born, that they are not yet good enough to be a contributor to society. He's like, welcome that one. So whenever, and that's why I think middle school ministry is my favorite one, because uh, every single kid has been told their entire, just ever since they can remember, that they're too loud, too annoying. They're not funny. They're not. You're just not enough. And then Jesus points at them and says, "Wow, look at that beloved one. Like, come, come and follow me." So
Jojo, I love
that's.
your attitude. Oh man, I love your attitude. It is so boundlessly optimistic. I got two things that are on my mind as you're talking about middle school ministry. The first is through my work in Atlanta as a pastor, because I was also at the time in our church. It's called bivocational, kind of like what you're doing.
Mhm.
I had the church, but I also had my career as an attorney.
Mhm.
I always was assigned to churches that were in the process of dying, that were closing because they couldn't afford to pay a pastor, and I didn't need to make any money. I
Mhm.
was, practicing law.
Mhm.
One of these churches I went into that has since closed, but was in kind of the death throes 2 or 3 years before it finally shut its door. Massive place that at one point in the 80s had 1,000 people. And I went back to the area that used to be the youth group room, where there's a piano and lots of places to hang out and chill and board games and all this kind of stuff, and two big cork billboards or bulletin boards on the wall that said, "Meet the youth of the church." And the bulletin boards were empty. And so
Mhm.
I really want to encourage you, because it is a harvest that you may never see, but also because of the work you're doing, it's a harvest that has to come. Because if we don't do this work, then we're going to end up with every church having those empty bulletin boards. You know, you
Yeah.
got to take care of the
Yeah.
kids. I just love it.
Yeah.
I just love it. So, having said
Yeah.
that, is your goal in this ministry to have kids go to their own churches, or did you end up planning a church? I kind of interrupted your story.
No, so yeah, funny enough, I found Young Life because I was in this crest. I'm like, how do I go to the people? Like, how do I go to the people? Because like the Christian church in Boulder is a lot of like just swapping, like, oh, this is like not really for me. I'm just gonna go to this other church, and it's something really common, but it's like really small town vibe because there's about 7 churches that I can probably name off the top of my head that people have either like switched between over, like if they're in Boulder for long enough that they'll continue to trade amongst themselves. And I had this big desire, like I want to go to the farthest out. I want to go to the person that's never been to church. I want to go to the person that has never heard the name of Jesus. I want to go to the person that said Jesus is not for me, and I want to go and have a conversation with them. So I actually accidentally stumbled across Young Life because they were doing specifically that. They were going into the
Mm,
public schools, they were going into communities, they were developing relationships with families and peer members that have either never been to church or have never or have said Jesus is not for me. And then those are
mhm.
the people that are going after it. And I'm like, man, that's what I wanted to do. Like with the whole church planning idea was I wanted to build relationships with people that have never had the opportunity to hear the gospel. So Young Life gave me this avenue and this wonderful blessing to go specifically to go to the farthest corners of Boulder, go into the farthest corners of a lunchroom, go into the farthest corners of a sports team, and find the kid that has never heard the gospel and bring them to the foot of the cross. And my desire for Young Life is that Young Life, like perfect world, that if this was like we mission accomplished, we did everything we had to do, Young Life wouldn't exist at that point. Like
Ah,
because Young Life is we're the fishing net of the church. We are not the church. We
Hmm.
are the extension of the church and a tool of the church to go out and bring kids into the local body. So me specifically, my desire is that kids get to come and hear the gospel and they ask, okay, what's next? Like I've accepted
Yeah.
Jesus. I want to go. I'm like, let's take you to the church, man. Like you welcome home.
Exactly.
Like so that's the main desire that I have for Young Life is to be not the church, not like some vigilante group that's trying to, baptize and do communion outside the church. Like, no, it's my job to be an extension, to be a net, to go and gather kids that have never experienced the gospel and welcome them home into the local body
Uh,
so that they can become disciples in the best way possible so that they can meet other family members that would welcome them as their own children so that they can also bring their own family members. Like, I don't want it to stop at a kid. I want it
right.
to invade the entire family of, like, mom, dad, you got to see this, like,
Right.
uncle,
Right.
auntie, come on.
Come and see.
Like, I,
Yeah.
I heard the good news. You want to come with? Like, that's that's honestly the desire for me because generationally, I want generational impact in Young Life. I want the next generation to be like, wow, like when I got to go to Young Life camp for the first time, and when I gave my life to Jesus, I want that moment to be a change, not only just for one kid, but for their family and for their community and for the next generation and for their grandkids. Uh, so that's the big desire. So yeah, Young Life couldn't exist. Like yeah, we just couldn't exist if our desire wasn't for bringing like these kids to the local church. And it can be muddied, and someone might be listening to this podcast and they're like, man, Young Life is just doing their own thing. They haven't, what are you talking about? They want to build their own church. And there's a lot of different experiences with Young Life. And I will say for me and my desire for this mission and what I believe that my team has stacked their hands on, and what I believe that the Young Life mission as a whole has stacked their hands on is that it's our job to bring kids to the local church so that they can be a part of the Christian family that Jesus gave us when he ascended into heaven, that we get to gather and be in community and family with him. So yeah, why would I don't know how we could do it separate from bringing kids to that.
I love it. All right. So, two questions then to follow up that. The first is when you talk about generational impact, sitting here in 2025, parents of middle schoolers are now far enough along into the view of modern church that I imagine many of them have a lot of hesitation from letting their middle schooler hang out with a 25, 6 year old guy, right? Because
Yeah.
in the last 20 years, the impression of clergy has changed dramatically because of a
Hmm.
whole lot of bad things that happened in the church
Hmm.
with youth, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is
Yeah.
your average middle schooler was probably 9, 10 years old during COVID. And if they're anything
Hmm.
like the high schoolers today in 2025, I imagine they spend a lot of time on this. This, by the way, is
Yeah.
my wife, Rebecca. They spend a lot of time on their phone and they spend a lot of
Mhm.
time with headphones on. So, between the
Mhm.
barrier of parent resistance and the barrier of kids having kind of silo or what do you call it, blinders on, how do you tackle through
Yeah.
that, man?
Yeah. That's super fun to hear about. I think it's something that's not irrelevant to Jesus' time. I
Mm,
mean, especially in Jesus' time, Jesus came to this earth and he walked on land and he spoke to so many different crowds. Uh, I mean, there was a lot of religious just hardship in the time where Jesus came, where he came to tell the Jewish temple, like, hey, like you are not loving as my father intended to love. And Jesus essentially encountered this crazy religious epidemic and flipped it on its head because of him demonstrating true love, demonstrating true servanthood, demonstrating true uh, affection that he intended from the beginning. So as I encounter family members that say, but the church did this, my family was affected like this, the first thing I do is grieve with them. I'm like, I'm so sorry that the church ever did that to you. I'm
Mm.
so sorry that this is like what you have received from people that are on this earth to love. Like that's what should happen. Um, and just being able to have conversations with families because I have a story of a kid. His name's Grayson. He is now going to be a freshman at one of our local high schools, but he was someone I knew from the beginning of his seventh grade year all the way through his eighth grade year.
Wow.
And Grayson was just one of the funniest kids. He always just approached me and always just tried to get me to crack. Like kids are so inappropriate in the public schools, and they're always like they look at me and they're like, I bet I can get him to crack. I can make him go cry in his car in the parking lot. But he was a kid that just always showed up. I could tell he always just wanted to have the attention of an adult. He wanted someone to ask him how his day was, to ask him like who he's gonna ask to homecoming, like all these kind of things. Yeah, not homecoming, like school dances. But
Yeah. Right.
uh he's a kid that eventually got to the point where he asked me, "Hey, you're the Jesus guy. I have some questions about God." And we're like in the middle of
Doesn't
a
that make you
football
feel good?
field.
Doesn't that make you feel
Yeah.
good that he's asking about
Oh,
that? I mean,
it's literally why I signed up for the job is for a kid to ask
exactly.
me like, "Hey, I have this question about God." That's literally why I signed up, and it's in the middle of the school. We're not supposed to talk about God at school. Like our school is
Right.
very specific to where they're like, "Hey, you can come volunteer here, but you cannot talk about Young Life. You can't invite a kid to Young Life. You cannot talk about any type of religious things like separation of church and state." So I'm like in my 2 year moment. This was like essentially last March that we had this conversation. And it was like I showed up on Wednesday and he was asking me like, "Hey, do you have these questions about God?" And I just asked him where are these coming from? Like I gave him some like general answers. I was like looking over my shoulder, is the principal going to take me by the neck and throw me out? But then I went back to the school on Thursday and he's like, "Hey man, I got more questions." And it was just another just like 30-minute lunch period to where he like it was him and I standing in the middle of this football field and he had even more questions about God. And I'm like, yeah, just like answering, just asking more questions, trying to lead by asking questions as well, like asking about his family, asking about like his story. On Thursday, he told me like, yeah, my mom was really hurt by the church, and now we don't go
Mm.
to church and we have nothing to do with church, but I still have these questions. I'm like, oh, that's like, thanks for sharing. Like, and I got to like take that, and I went back on Friday, and he's like, dude, I have even more questions about God. And I finally got to the point. I'm like, hey man, why don't you look up my job, like my other jobs? I always tell kid my other job. Like, why don't you go look up my other jobs website and show it to your mom? Like, be like, it's BoulderValleyYoungLife.org. Like, go and like take that to your mom. And my email is on there. Ask your mom to reach out to me because I would love to talk to her and see if you can come to our club. But I can't invite you. Like, I need to talk to your mom. And he's like, all right, bet. Uh, Kids say bet. That's just like, yes,
Right.
okay.
I got
So
you.
bet. Uh, so I come back to the school the next week, and the principal pulls me aside, and he says, "Hey, I need to talk to you. I had a mom email me about Young Life, and
Mm.
she is freaked out." And I'm like,
Yeah, man.
I was kind of like, "All right, you can cuff me now." I
Right,
thought I was
right.
doing it right, and then he's like, "No, no, no, like you're not in trouble. Like I want to know more about like the principal was like, I want to know more about Young Life so I can talk about uh how much we believe and trust in you guys so that we can communicate to other family members like, hey, like these are the people inside of our school and this is what their desire is to do in our community." Then I'm like, oh my gosh, these are non-Christian community members. Like this is like our principal, he's like traditionally Jewish, not practicing. The other main principal is non-religious affiliated. And they're like, we want to tell the family members who you are and like communicate better to them so I can respond to those emails with full trust and full transparency to them of how much we believe in you. I'm like, that's crazy. So I was like excited. I'm like, sweet, another goal ticked off that we're a pillar of our community, even though even though like they're not a Christian community, like they're like they believe in us and they want us there. I'm like, that's exciting. But I'm like, oh, but I probably lost Grayson. I probably lost him. He probably won't show up to our club. I messed up. Like mom's not gonna let him come. And then the last club of the year, this was probably a week after his mom emailed the school. We were sitting there. We had free Chick-fil-A sandwiches and we were like passing them out. And I saw this car roll up and Grayson popped out of the car. And apparently, based off the interaction that she had with the principal, and she recognized that our intention was not to manipulate or try to push an agenda, but to live out the life of Jesus and share that with every kid that we know. Uh, she recognized from my interaction with her son Grayson was actually something where she once experienced hurt, but then actually saw a genuine affection and a desire to see the next generation come. So Grayson got dropped off. He got connected in our club. He started showing up, and now he's someone that we get to interact with consistently. Like now we go and meet at coffee shops to be mentored, and now he has beyond the school system. I now get to interact with Grayson in a one-on-one mentorship because of the affection, even though there were so many assumptions by parents saying like I've been hurt by this. Essentially we get to live out a different thing, just like Jesus said, like, hey, I'm sorry that's what you experienced, but this is the true way, this is the true love and the true affection that is intended from the beginning. So that's my favorite story to share, and
I
especially
love
because
it.
it happened so recently.
Yeah.
Uh, but over any bias and over any preconceived notion, Jesus' love never had to convince anybody that it was like fantastic. Like Jesus' love speaks for itself, and it breaks through any type of bias. It breaks through any type of preconceived notion, and then we get to go and embody that and say, "Hey, like this is what it really is. This is the true love of the church, and like we want you to come and see."
This is what
So
it looks like. Now, I got to
yeah.
ask you because you reminded me of something as you're talking about grace and saying, man, I can make this guy crack. My dear sweet mother, who is now in her late 70s and has Alzheimer's and won't be able to enjoy this part of our conversation, used to say when she got her doctorate in education, she has a PhD in education from the University of Maryland that she received in 1990. So call it 35
Mm,
years ago. All right.
mm.
But before that, for 20 years, she taught middle school science. And she used to say the reason I went to get my doctorate and become a teacher of teachers is middle schoolers, because they would give her such a hard time, and in particular the girl. Now
Yeah.
look, this is the 70s and 80s. I'm sure things are much different now, but
Yeah. Oh,
I have a feeling it's human nature for girls to form cliques in seventh grade and for them to be ugly to each other and for them to push back against authority. That's part of being a 13 and 14-year-old. So what's
mhm,
you reminded me to ask you about that, Jojo, because Grayson
mhm.
was like trying to push and prod and see how he could make you crack. I imagine you have
Yeah.
that from other kids too. What's that like, and how do you combat that? You go home to your wife and say, "Man, middle schoolers."
Yeah. Oh man. I think you say there's no mistakes and there's no coincidences, but I still sometimes when I enter that school as a redheaded man that God made a mistake sending me because I it's a field day. They're like,
Yeah.
man, look, we have already 20 insults right in the chamber, and we're ready to fire them at you as soon as you walk in. So it was actually when I first got into this school, uh, I talked to uh, my friend Jake, who was he was a local youth pastor, and I reached out to him because I knew he was inside of Centennial Middle School. That was the school I wanted to volunteer with. He gave me all the connections on how to get involved in the school, how to like begin my journey of trying to become a pillar of this school and to be a servant of the community. Uh, Jake he gave me all the information, but then at the very end, he's like, "But be careful. If you give them any sign of weakness, they will destroy you." And I'm like, I don't know about that. He's like, no, no, no. My first day walking in, he has blonde, long hair and glasses. Like they gave me the nickname Jeffrey Dahmer, and it still has not left me for the 2 years that I have volunteered there. And now, like, he's like, I'd even show them any weakness. They just already just told me that I'm like based off the way I look,
Right.
I'm a creepy guy. And that's how
Or
I'm known
pounce
around the
on me
school. He's
like
like, be careful,
hyenas.
man.
Yeah, be
Yeah.
careful.
They'll find your worst insecurity in 5 seconds and acknowledge it. Like, yeah, they came after me out the gate. But the thing is, being a redheaded man in middle, like I was a redheaded boy in middle school that already received all the flack and all the jokes and all the insults is I kind of know how to dish it back. So I'm the kind of guy that walks in and kids will try to make fun of me, but I know how to let it roll off because I've already have years of
Right.
tenure of dealing with this. So it's not bad for me. It's bad for some of my volunteers where they're very, very sensitive and they are they don't know how to get through those hard conversations, but it gets to the point where if you don't let it affect you, that's when kids are finally like, okay, what's your deal? And that's usually a
Right.
gospel conversation that gets to come out of
Right.
it. They're
I
like,
love it.
I call you leprechaun every day. Why does it not hurt you? Then I'm like, because my identity is not found in what you say I am. Like I don't attribute value to what you say. I attribute value to something else. Like who
Exactly.
someone else says I am priceless. Like and he's like, really? Like, tell me more about that. I'm like, come to
Yeah.
club, I'll tell you all about it. Yeah. So
I love that.
yeah.
Hey,
So
so when you talk about coming to club, and then the goal is to get kids to church, how,
mhm.
do the other churches in Boulder have youth pastors or youth ministers that you coordinate with and kind of pass the baton, or do you help kids church shop? How does that transition work?
So our specific model is very unique. So we have two different programmatic elements that happens week to week. We have this thing called club, which is like the party with the purpose. That's what we call it.
All right.
The party with a purpose is typically we have a theme for the night, whether it's like we'll have like pillow fight club or we'll have we do country club every year or country versus country club where people dress either like in like redneck outfits versus like looking like you just got off the tennis court. We have all these different theme nights with the intention of bringing kids to us and showing them that we can have fun. Like life is not just you know, turn in homework, go to sports practice, whatever. Like we get to go and like make light of ourselves. And it's basically this giant funnel that we do to where we bring it to a gospel presentation right at the end, to where we get to talk about the very person of Jesus Christ. We always go through this gospel translation or this gospel timeline where we talk about the person of Jesus all the way down the road to his like death, burial, and resurrection. Like we talk about all of it over the entire semester. And when we have our clubs, that's basically our invitation to say, hey, what do you have to say about that? Like, I'm not trying to convince you. What questions do you have now? And
Yeah.
then our other program that follows, so we do it on a bi-weekly basis. We'll have club 1 week. The following week we will have campaigners, which is our unpacking and our questions that we have about the gospel. It's the place where we will have questions written out and we'll do small groups with the kids and we get to ask a lot of like specific questions where it's like if we talked about the cross, well, let's say like we would talk about sin talk. We talk about what sin is and we define what sin is and we tell life stories about what sin is and we basically say like, hey, sin is something either done by you, to you, or done around you. Then we'll go to our campaigners, like if that's the whole core of our sin talk. uh, we'll ask like, what's an example of like like how have you seen sin prior to our club talk? And kids will be able to ask all these curiosities that they have and be able to have all these different questions answered of like, man, I thought sin was just like stealing, like, but I don't think I'm that sinful. Like I've actually like I feel perfect the way I am. And then we get to talk about like, oh, like that's a really cool observation. Like this is what we define as sin. Like, do you have any more questions? Like, and basically, we're building up these relationships to where they get to come to the moment of like, wow, like, I think I want the next step. I want to go I want to go into this Christianity thing. I want to figure out this more. And that's where we as leaders invite kids to come to church with us. Like, hey, I'll pick you up this Sunday. Why don't you like? I'll have breakfast burritos in the car. Like, how would you come to church with me? And you see exactly what I do day in, like week in, week out. And that's where the invitation comes. Is like as we continue to address all the curiosities, address all the preconceived notions, address all the mistaken understandings of the gospel, and we get to clarify but not be the solution. Where it's like I'm like, hey, how about you come with me because I'm still a student myself. Like I
Hmm.
haven't outgrown the church. Like this is the place where it's like this is where life flows, man. So how about you come with me and we can go learn together. Um, and this like mentorship relationship that we get to have from our club and our campaigners gets to be the perfect avenue of invitation into the local bodies with us.
I love it. And so, how do you choose one of those local bodies? Is it just kind of where the student lives, what kind of neighborhood, or more just the vibe that the kid gives you about what is a good fit for them church wise?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question because there's a lot of different factors that we think about.
Yeah,
Our first question is, does this family have a connection with the local church? Like,
yeah, that
is
makes
this
sense.
like a kid that is this a kid that like is this a kid that has been a part of a church family but just like wants nothing to do with it, and that's the kid we get to interact with? That's a story that we get to hear a lot. Our desire for them is to go where their family is. We want to make sure that family stays connected. So if a kid's like, I really want to go to church, uh, but I don't know what to do. I'm like, dude, how about like you encourage you talk to your family and be like, hey, mom, dad, I want to come to church. Can I start going to church again? And like that's like our first question is like, is the family a part of a church? Is the family like, loosely Christian? Like, can we actually like get the whole family to come to church? Uh, like that would be like ideal so we
That's
can actually
ideal,
send them
right?
on that trajectory. Yeah, that's like the ideal situation. If there's a kid that does not have a family that goes to church, typically we ask a lot of questions of like, do you want to come with me? Like, do you want to come with me to church? Because I would love for you to come with me to church. And typically, like they will have that connected relationship with that leader. And as we invite them to church, we actually try to introduce them to the youth director, youth pastor, whoever is over that thing, and actually allow that youth pastor to develop a relationship with our kid and be like, hey, like this guy does something to where he gets to talk about Jesus in like the most specific way to where he wants to raise you up as a disciple. Like, and that's probably it is like it's the hardest turn point in young life is where kids are like, no, I want to follow my young life leader to the end of the
Right,
earth.
right.
Like they're like, I want him or nobody. And that's like an opportunity for a young life leader to be humble and be like, it's not about me. Like you're not building this Jesus relationship on me. I want you to go to where you get to learn more about Jesus. So it's not about me. It's kind of like how John the Baptist did it. Like John the Baptist
Yep.
was a disciple maker. Like he had disciples, and when they saw Jesus walking across the street, and he's like, "Look, there's the Lamb of God. Go and follow him." John instantly lost his disciples all to Jesus, like left alone, and he gets to say, "Wow, job well done.
Yeah,
I did it."
exactly.
Like
Mission
I did it,
accomplished.
even though even though they're not around me right now. Like I did exactly what I was put on this earth to do, to point people to the Lamb of God. So that's where, and that's a lot of our training that we have for young life people is like, when are we going to be like John the Baptist and say, hey, look, there's the Lamb of God, go follow him. Don't follow me.
Jojo,
So
you
that's like
mentioned that
the,
you have I'm sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned that you have a
no, yeah.
team. Is it a team there in the Boulder Valley, or you organized by the state of Colorado? How does that work?
So we have specifically Boulder Valley Young Life, and we have 30 volunteers over the Boulder, Louisville, and Superior area. So like Louisville, Superior is a small town that's outside of downtown Boulder.
Hmm.
But we have a placement to where we have leaders based off their life circumstances, callings, to where we get to place them in specific teams at local middle schools to where they get to go and serve that school specifically. So me being over Centennial Middle School in North Downtown Boulder, I have a team of 6, including myself, that go after specific grades in downtown Boulder. So I have 3 volunteer girls that go after the 6th grade middle school girls, 7th grade middle school girls, and 8th grade middle school girls. And then I have myself, who is pursuing currently this year 8th grade middle school boys. I have 2 other male volunteers, that one's going after 6th grade boys and one's going after 7th grade boys. And that's the model that Young Life has typically adopted. If you have the ability to have that many volunteers, to have someone that goes and pursues grades, because we love pursuing kids in life stages, because a 6th grade kid is going to have way different curiosity than 8th grade kids, because 6th grade
Right.
kid is still thinking about, like, can I wear this Snuggie to school and is it still cool? When an 8th grade kid is
Right.
like, how can I get the most girls to look at me because I recognize that actually
Right.
matters now. So
Right.
that's typically how we try to do it. And with those relationships built, it also helps when we want to invite kids into the local church, invite people to come to church with us, that we can take the age groups that we have and be able to have them like, hey, like, you guys can do this as a team. Like, you guys can all go together and be a part of this community, and they get to be locked arm life stage together, being in the same classes, being like in camaraderie with one another, and building those relationships. So that's how our volunteers go. But Young Life as a whole, it just continues to grow. Like, we are a specific area within our region. Like, we have the whole Front Range region that gives us guidelines and helps us with budgeting, helps us with signing up kids for camp. But us specifically, like, we are a like Boulder County area with Boulder County volunteers.
Isn't that cool? And the fact that you have 30 volunteers in that community, to me, speaks very highly of the work that y'all are doing, right? Given that you started off with the presumption that, hey, it's one of the most unchurched communities in America. I'm going to have no
Mhm.
Christians there. So now you got 30 volunteers where you can kind of slice the bread that carefully by middle school age. What a blessing.
Yeah, it's the beautiful part, even with the 30 volunteers, that we have the average lifespan of 5 years of commitment. Like, we have
Wow.
almost no turnover. We when we first started Boulder Valley Young Life, like, let's say, because it was Boulder, or it was Denver metro area, and then Boulder started its own thing. We had college students that went to CU Boulder that had an understanding of what Young Life was, or either were a part of it back in their hometowns, or even just like found Jesus in college. Like, what do I do next? Like, I want to go find kids as well. Uh, we've had some fell. We have uh, so many volunteers that started their freshman year of college volunteering, and now 5 years from that point, we've had 7 out of 9 of our original freshman volunteers become career leaders in Boulder, because they said, I don't want to leave. Like, the mission's not
Wow.
done. So the thing that we're seeing continually in Boulder Valley Young Life is this lack of turnover and this consistency of wanting to see the mission follow through. Um,
Hmm.
and that's something that's really cool about Young Life too, is like, our model specifically is like, we go up with our kids. So, like, if someone is leading in 6th grade and they're leading those 6th grade kids, they're not just the 6th grade leader. They get to go up and they become the 7th grade leader as they follow those kids up, and then they get to be the 8th grade leader. Then on and on. I actually just had a volunteer who left my team for good reason. She started volunteering with 6th grade girls at Centennial Middle School, and now she is going up to Boulder High School to lead 9th grade girls, the same girls that she led and took to
Oh,
camp when
that's
they were in
great.
6th grade. And she gets to follow up with their life stage and be a part of their life and their story. And it's not uncommon for people in Young Life to have kids like be out of high school, out of college, and getting married, and they still have their Young Life leader checking in and being part of their life, being in their wedding ceremonies, being at their graduations, being at these grand life stages. Because even though our goal is still to point them to the local church and be a part of a Christian community that is bigger than Young Life, uh, we have consistent leaders that say, I want to still be a part of this kid's life. I want to be a person that they can call on when things get low. Like, it's not uncommon for kids in high school to disappear their sophomore and junior year because they
They're
ghosted their
busy.
leader and they wanted to taste the world.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's something that's very, very common, and but the leaders just want to see it through. They want to be a support system, a reminder, a mentor to these kids to continue to point them to the cross, no matter what season of life they're in. So it really is a beautiful system,
I
and
love it.
it's something that I genuinely cherish.
So, what is the season of life for Young Life? Does it start in sixth grade and go through high school graduation?
So wait, can you repeat that question?
Sure.
Oh
So, do y'all
yeah.
start with sixth graders and go through high school graduation, or do you go? Does Young Life include kids in elementary school?
So we start at sixth grade, yeah. So our first interaction with Young Life, like for a kid to be a part of a Young Life program, is sixth grade. And actually, Young Life goes to so many different degrees because they have Young Life College. That's
Mm,
something that, like, after your senior year, like, there's an opportunity for kids to be involved in Young Life College, which is definitely different than elementary and or middle school and high school ages. But we also have different programs too. We have Young Life Capernaum, which is specifically for kids with special needs or different types of social inabilities, to where they get to have partnership with uh, like Young Life leaders that will follow them as well. And we
that's
also
really cool.
have Young Lives. We have Young Life that is specifically devoted to teen moms.
Mm.
So it'll be like a Young Life leader that's specifically partnering with teen moms, that we have camps and like all these different programs that we get to interact with these teen moms and be a support system to them. So like those are the different stages. So it's also like age stage as well as like just life stage. Sorry, I think I was redundant right there. Life
No, no,
stages
I love
and
it.
also just like current, yeah,
That's
ability
great.
stage and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's great. All right,
Uh,
so Jojo, I love hearing about the fact that that youth Young Life goes through basically middle school through high school. When part of the reason we're so excited to have you on the podcast is so that we can help. So when folks give to Young Life, Boulder Valley Young Life, what does that money go for? How does that help do this fantastic work that y'all are doing?
yeah. So when people are giving to me, there's a couple things they're giving to. Like, I am someone that raises my own salary. Being a nonprofit, there's a lot of different costs, things that become a part of that. Um, and I'm not someone that actually designates my own salary. That Young Life has actually designated it for me. So anything
Mm,
that I'm raising is going towards my specific designated salary, as well as supporting for the benefits that come, like life insurance and anything like that. And me being a married person, that I'm also raising the benefits for my wife, who gets to be on those. Luckily, being a full time student, that she gets to be on my benefits as well. But the grand scheme of people donating to Young Life is donating to an operation fund that we get to work out of, to develop programs, to develop uh, event opportunities to meet more kids, to equip our volunteers with tools that they may not have prior, to do volunteering trainings, and to send kids to summer camp. So
oh,
all
okay.
of those different things. Oh yeah.
Yeah, summer camp. That's great. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Summer camp is essentially uh like a year's worth of interaction in 1 week, to where we get to go
Wow.
and take, yeah, it's, if you think about it, most of the interactions that you have with kids uh in our line of work is between an hour and 3 hours at a time. But going to a week of Young Life Camp, which is between 5 and 7 days, depending on your age group, that you are getting so many hours of one-on-one time with kids as they get to go encounter uh, the gospel presented to them through games, events, and camp speakers. So Young Life Camp is one of the most well-maintained camps, uh, probably in the country, maybe even the world, because our founder, Jim Rayburn, said you can't deliver the gospel in a paper bag. Like, it's one of the nicest facilities that you could be a part of, to where kids do family-style meals, to where I actually just came back from our Canadian camp, Malibu, to where I got to run the dining hall, and we got to create an environment to where they got to have family style seating and have high school kids serving other high school kids meals, uh, 3 times a day to develop specific relationships. Like,
Wow.
just like our club is like a party with a purpose, uh, Young Life Camp is like a vacation with a purpose, to where everything we do and say and act out is a direct funneling to the gospel. So that Young Life Camp, I'm a camp guy. I love it more than anything in this world. I get to go. We have winter camps as well, that are in the fall. That sounds. We have snow camp, which is in the fall, where I get to go and take kids to camp as well as help run the camp, to be a part of that mechanism of the gospel. And I get to do that the same thing over the summer, where I get to go to camp for a month to help run it. Then I also get to go and bring my kids there for a week. So
Isn't that cool?
Young Life
So is
Camp,
there
people love Young Life Camp.
of course.
Yeah.
It's sort of funny. Our son, our oldest son, is 25, and he did some camp work in Alabama while he was at the University
Hmm.
of Alabama. I think he's a camp guy
Hmm.
too. Once you get bitten by the bug, I guess
Yeah.
figuratively and literally, you really
Yeah.
enjoy it. So, is there just
Oh
one
yeah.
Young Life camp in the United States? Everybody goes to the same Young Life camp, or is there
Uh,
one in Colorado specifically?
there's so many. So we have one in Winter Park, Colorado. We have a smaller family camp in Buena Vista. Uh, we also have another one that's potentially opening up again. Young Life Camp got hit hard by COVID because of camp attendance, so there was a lot of like
Sure.
restructuring, closing down, reallocating resources. So we have approximately 3 camps, if I'm going to count the one that's about to start up again. But in the United States, I believe, and I'm going to get this so wrong because there's so many Young Life camps in the United States, including Canada, one in Canada. I believe that there is 18 to 20 Young Life camps all
Wow.
across the country.
Wow.
Yeah, and
That's fantastic. And by the way, as you're
yeah,
listing off those names, I had to pause for a minute because Winter Park and Buena Vista are towns in Florida too. I
oh,
was like, all right, am
yeah,
I different kind of
they
camp?
do have also, yeah, they very different vibe than a Florida camp. It's very much like it's high mountain ranges, like especially in the winter, blizzards, the whole it's a pretty fun environment. But yeah, very I believe that Florida has I'm totally gonna I think they have Clearwater Cove, which is like it's a pretty sweet one. But if I'm wrong about that, someone will attack me in the comments. I'm fine with that. So I'm
Don't
fine with
you
being
worry.
wrong.
Hey, we're going to put links to that in our show notes as well as ways for people to help you. So, what's that like? I
Yeah.
mean, as we talk about and kind of move over to our discussion of the Christian capitalist, so many people
Hmm.
think of hard work and generous giving to the poor and needy in the context of capitalism as complete opposites, because capitalism is all
Hmm.
about greed. What do you think
Hmm.
about that, and the benefits that capitalism can bring to others?
Yeah. So capitalism is such a unique thing because if I were to look at my life, I'm dependent on other people's generosity. I'm dependent on someone saying, I believe in you, or I believe in your mission, or I believe in your city, that the thing that you're doing is a worthwhile investment for me to give over my generosity so that you can continue operating in this market. So when I think about capitalism and my specific thing, in my specific line of work, is that I am essentially selling uh, an idea of a mission to people and telling people that this is the greatest return on investment that you could possibly have.
Mm,
And it can become very difficult for people to like have that tangibly, because like in capitalism that there's like competition, that there's better investments and worse investments, that eventually that you will look at businesses that will not succeed because there is something that is better out there, that is more efficient, that is a better price, and that it just begins to even itself out. So essentially, when I tell people that the thing that I am doing at Young Life is one of the greatest things you can possibly invest into, I can't just say, and then I'll give you exactly what you had back. Like you invest $1,000 into me, I'll give you $5,000 in return. It's not that simple.
Right.
It definitely does not work in that way. The way that I typically communicate to people and the way that they demonstrate generosity to me is one, that you will see a generational return as you begin to see kids and families not only experience the gospel, but will change the trajectory of the next generation that is to come. So as you're investing into me, you're essentially getting a return on a generational impact that will go beyond anything that we could ever imagine, uh, because of the way that the gospel works. That you will see communities change, you will see families change, you will see brokenness like resolved, that you will see uh, literally like a town change, like without people investing into me and investing into the mission, at least as a whole, of what our desire is to bring the gospel to the farthest out places. Without that investment, Boulder will continue to be in that pagan
Yeah.
or pre-Christian society. So you have to basically expand outward on what the return on investment is. And also in the conversation of generosity, I love talking about generosity because that is also something that you receive in yourself, a relinquishment of what you believe is yours. When I
Ah,
first had an encounter with generosity was in my senior year of college, and it was the first time it was ever asked of me to give away my money with no expectation of anything to come back. And that was a huge core moment in me when someone said, "Hey, I need $500." Uh, when I had only $500 in my bank account, I had to ask myself, God, why are you asking this of me? And I recognized that God was affording the greatest freedom I could ever have of saying, God, this is yours, not mine. So I will do with it as you please. And then I gave over this $500 and did not get a penny back. But it was a moment that I got to recognize, well, Lord, if you ask me to give, then Lord, then I will have no fear of what I will receive. Because if you will clothe the lilies, if you will feed the sparrow, all these
that's
things that
exactly what I
are,
was just thinking of,
yeah,
Jojo. Exactly.
I'm like, so if you are using me as a vessel to go and bless and clothe and, feed others, then why would I have any fear that you would look at your child and say, but I won't feed him? So that was the moment when generosity, and I am a recipient of so much generosity to where when I raise my own salary, where I raise my own benefits, to where I live in one of the most expensive towns in the country on a Young Life nonprofit salary. The stories are unbelievable on how I have never feared of being clothed. I've never feared of being housed. I've never feared of being fed because of that lesson I learned in college of this is not even mine to give.
And
So,
that's
and
something that's one of the core
yeah,
principles of the Christian capitalist. Everything we have comes from God. We're just stewards of it during
yeah,
our brief time here on earth. And so recognizing that and then sharing it freely with others is so important.
hmm
Jojo, this is going to be our 39th episode. And I got to tell you, time and time again, people tell me about how they gave away their last dollar and then they are just almost immediately blessed, and usually blessed tenfold. It sounds
hmm
like to me, though, the blessing that you received is one that was more in your heart and gave you the
hmm
confidence to take this leap of faith to be a missionary. Do you agree with that?
hmm Oh, I have so many stories to where I have both received, and I'm not a man of prosperity gospel. I'm not like you give and then you get all these things back.
Right.
I just say I give because the Lord gave to me. But the amount of stories that I have received, both inside, where I'm like the freedom of generosity that I've experienced, but also the physical generosity that I have received, to where I love sharing the stories, but I get so afraid to share them because I'm afraid that people will assume that that is going to be every story of generosity. Like an example is that when I moved to Boulder, I had nothing. I did not have a home. I did not have any place to live. I actually even got to the point where I lived in a van for a year in Boulder so that I could continue to be a ministry here. But even as those stories like continued on, there was a lot of ways that generosity triggered these moments of provision for me. To where one day a friend, I had this plan to go and buy a van for unbelievably cheap. Uh, and because of my wonderful, awesome parents, I had a awesome 2002 4Runner with zero rust, jacked up, like in Boulder's used car market, it would have fetched me a very, very large dollar. Uh, and then I was preparing to sell it, and I had a friend walk up to me and like saying like, "Hey man, my car broke down. I need to buy our car fast, or I'm not going to be able to get to work." And I asked him, "Well, what's your budget for a car?" Uh, and he said a very, very low number. And this quick prompting in me said, "Well, that's exactly the number I'm selling my car for." Not not
Wow.
true, but I recognize in that moment, the Holy Spirit prompts me, sell him the car for that budget number. And I said yes to this, and I sold him this immaculate, wonderful car that was such a blessing to me. I recognize, well, God, like I still need to live in Boulder, and I understand this blessing that this person was going to receive. I will trust that you will do what you will, and you will provide me a home. You will provide me this thing. So I went to a worship night that night, and I was like crying, like because I had the doubt filled in me, where it's
Right.
like, God, like I literally just sold I'm trying to get this van so I can live in Boulder and like do this thing that I feel like you're telling me to do. And then you prompt me to sell my car for half the price I could have gotten it for. Uh, why would you do this? Like, this feels so contrary. And I had this guy touch me on the shoulder. He said, "Hey, what are you crying about, man?" And I'm like, I told him the whole story about the car and how I already sold my car, and now I don't think I can afford a van. And now I feel like I'm going to be homeless, and what am I supposed to do? He's like, "Well, how much did you like lose on the sale?" I'm like, "I lost about $5,000 on that sale." And he like lit up, and he was like, $5,000? I've been praying on the number $5,000 since January. Like, I think God is telling me to give you $5,000 right now. I'm like, "You're kidding."
Oh,
And he wrote a check and handed it to me and said,
unbelievable.
"Here." So, like, that's an example of a story where I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my goodness, God, it's not mine." Like, that, it was never
Right.
mine. It was never my price. Like, you gave this car to this person, then you said, "But I will continue to house you." And then if you want to go even crazier, that as I was called to live in Boulder, and as I was going on in life, and as I was living in the van, someone told me, "You can't just live in a van. Like, you cannot just live in a you
Was
cannot
that
just
your
live."
parents? Is that your parents that are like, "Hey,
Yeah,
dude, come on, you just can't live. You can't
you'll
just
be
live in a van."
surprised how many. I had coworkers. I worked for a climbing retail, and like just dirty, gritty people. And they're like, "Dude, that's too dirty and too gritty. You got to stop." And I was thinking to myself, like, "How, Lord, how are you going to make me stay here permanently? Like, if this is the place that you're calling me to be, like, how can you enable me to stay here?" And then I started dating my now wife, Amy, and I was in a van pursuing my wife, and she was like, "Hey," like we were on our third date, and she was like, "Hey, do you want to come over? Like I would love for you to, like, I need to put up a Christmas tree. Like, you want to help me out?" And I came over to her house, and I'm like, "Wow, this place is awesome. This is like unbelievable. She's like, yeah, it was a huge blessing to me. Uh, and we just continued on to date, and then like marriage was, or engagement was soon a part of that. And I asked her more as we were dating about her home and her situation. And she's like, actually, like this house was given to me. I don't have a mortgage on it because
Wow.
uh, I was able to invest into it because of her story, to where she received a large sum because of her mom passing away, and then her mom's parents both passing away years after that. So she received this inheritance, and thought, I felt the Lord prompting me to buy a home here in Lafayette, here in like in Boulder, Colorado. And then as I was like connecting the pieces, I'm like, Lord, are you about to give me a house? And now the house that I'm in right now, going from as simple, I like to tell people from the beginning of relinquishing this $500 that I learned was never mine in the first place. And then as I received this calling to be in the most expensive town in the world, that God even gave me a home that I do not have to pay for,
Yeah.
because He has called me to this place. And I love telling that story with the asterisks of like, I'm not saying God's going to give you a house because you give $500. It's not like the paperclip story
Right.
where you go from a paperclip to a house. I just know that I have never had a fear in my life that the Lord would call me and bless me to be in the place that I am today. And if I were to fear of where that would come from, is just short sighted on the kingdom economics that are in play today. So,
What do you, that's a really, first of all, what a beautiful story. And you're exactly right. Talk about, I mean, you're in the labor field of Boulder Valley, and you're taking the
mhm,
long view on the return on the investment. God's
mhm,
taking the long term view on the return on the investment with you too, and
yeah,
blessing you in ways that just take time to unfold.
yeah.
You've mentioned a phrase, though, just now that I have not heard before: kingdom economics. What does that mean to you? I love that.
Yeah, kingdom economics is something I don't know if anyone ever told it to me, but it's just something that just comes to mind to when
I'm going
people
to attribute
have
it to you.
decided.
I'm going to attribute it to you, Jojo. So you go ahead.
Yeah, so a kingdom economics is where people have this understanding of just entitlement to what they've earned. That they think, like, this is prior to like just regular economics, that like that it's analytical, that you can process it and be able, like, I have a friend that's an actuary, that's like, I can process anything. I know the statistics, and I know what's the most likely return, or what's the likely statistic that this is something that you will experience. And the kingdom economics throws that out the window, because so many times that, like, I am not entitled to any blessing that's been afforded me, but yet a good father gives good gifts to his kids. Um,
Mhm.
so many times, like, I can't invest into something like where I'm like, God, I feel like you're calling for me to give over this thing that you've entrusted to me. uh I can't possibly analyze now what's gonna come out, like, like, what's like, am I gonna get literally tenfold return on this investment? And the answer is like, I can't, that's not for me to say. So this kingdom economics is essentially like a submission to something higher than me, bigger than me, that even as I give, that my return is already fully fulfilled because God already said I am His beloved. So whether I give over, like, whether my home burns down tomorrow and there's no way to get it back, I won't say, wow, like that was a poor investment or that was a poor gift. I'll say,
Yeah.
wow, God, I cannot wait to see how you will continue to carry me through, because you have entrusted me to be a part of this mission here in this town. And even to the day where He calls me away, whether it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, a week from now, to go and be loyal to Him, whether it's a different place or a different mission or whatever it might be. Uh, there's nothing I can do to say, like, I built this, or I made this profit, or I did these things. It is a full submission to knowing that everything I am and everything I have is the Lord's, and
Oh, I
He
love
will
that.
do as He will.
I
So,
love that. So, and I think the way that you describe it, kingdom economics, is kind of putting a fine point on something we discuss in the book, the parable of the vineyard, of the workers in the vineyard,
mhm,
right? God brings them in the morning, and then in the noon, and in the midday, and then in the evening, and they're all paid the same at the end. And
Hmm.
that's not a lesson in economics, right? There's no
Yeah.
hourly wage in the kingdom of heaven. Those are kingdom
Hmm.
economics. God's
Yeah.
glory and his grace are so wide we can't even understand them.
Yeah.
But so many people look at that as an example of why capitalism and Christianity don't fit. They say, well, look,
Mm.
even Jesus tells us a parable where everyone makes the same. Why do we have to worry
Hmm.
about some people making more than others? How do you see that
Yeah.
in your ministry as people are donating and being generous with you? Are
Yeah.
do you find that these are folks in business who want to give back to their community and spread the gospel?
So, a parable that I think about when it comes to Christian capitalism is the parable of the talents or the minas or whatever way that you want to, or whatever your translation says. In that there is, when people give to me, they are entrusting something with me, whether they felt the Lord give over to them, or even I have a lot of people that are not Christians that give over their generosity to me because they believe that mentorship is super valuable. But essentially, like whatever people give to me is an entrusting of like the resources that is passed on. And when I look at the parable of the talents of how people were entrusted with certain talents, whether it be the one that was entrusted with one or the one that was entrusted with two or five or whatever it is, they were called to go and invest those things, those talents into their community and to go and make a return on it. Not because of anything that was entitled to them, but because it was the Lord's that he entrusted for us to go and make more of. So when people are investing into me, I receive this talent, this mina, or whatever way for the sake of the parable. Um, I say, I want to go and multiply this, not for your sake, but for the Father's sake. So I operate in boldness. I operate in ways to where I look at these things of like, this is not something for me to hide. This is not something for me to bury. That this is something for me to use my hands and my feet to go out to all the corners of Boulder, and how can I multiply this for the sake of the Father? Because the parable where the one person is afraid to school, like
Right.
afraid to lose their investment, so he buries it, and he did not do what he was supposed to do. He was like, it wasn't for his safety, it wasn't for something for him to store up himself. It was for the sake of him to go and multiply it for the sake of the Father.
I
And
love that.
when I look at myself and when I receive something, I'm like, this is something that I'm not going to try to pocket. This is not something I'm going to try to hide, not something I'm going to be afraid of holding, but something that I have a desire as someone gives me their resources to go and multiply it for the sake of the Father in Boulder, Colorado, amongst the harvest field of kids, amongst the harvest field of family, amongst the harvest field for the sake of flowing people into the local church. So that's the best way I could really think. Like for people to say that capitalism is not a part of the kingdom, I don't necessarily agree with that, because there's so many ways that when we've been entrusted with something that we are called to make more of it, not for our sake but for the Father's sake.
I love that, Jojo. That's just fantastic. And so that I think that's a perfect segue to our signature question. What does it mean to you to be a Christian capitalist?
For me, what it means to be a Christian capitalist is to understand, well, there's a lot of ways I look at capitalism, and something that my father really taught me is that there's a lot of different things that we can do in life. And there's a lot of different metrics on how we can determine like what we're called to. And a lot of it is there a market for it? That is there a need in this world for it? Are you good at it? Like there's so many different metrics that you have, and I get to analyze uh the calling that I have. And I recognize that the giftings that God has given me, that is there actually a need for this thing in the world? And I base all these different parts on the things that I believe I'm called to go and invest into. So as I'm a Christian capitalist, I look at the way that God has made me and the needs in this world, and providing through the things that God has afforded me to go and fulfill that need. I will entrust that if that is the thing that God has called me to do, that is something that will be blessed and built upon. And there will be a time that whether that is callings change, whether the market change. Like if Young Life dies because there is no longer need for it, all for the Father. You know,
Right.
if there is
Right.
no longer a need for Young Life to live, then that's just like that's the truth of it. Praise God that no Young Life is no longer needed because of all the kids that have come to the Father, because of all the families and the communities that have been affected by this ministry that we no longer are needed. Like that's just a part of like the cap. Like there's no longer a market for it. So basically, like when I look at myself as a Christian capitalist, is I am using my giftings, my callings, my talents to go to an industry that has a need and a market, and I will continue to serve in that place as long as that need and that market and that calling is there.
I
Uh,
love it.
and that's it. And that's how I view it. And my prayer is one day that this market will close and that the Lord will call me into another thing. Uh, but I will continue to wait patiently, and I'll continue to listen to the Spirit. And as I know the Lord loves me, and as I know that He's building me up, that I will go wherever He calls me to whatever market or calling that He has for me.
Oh, I just love that, Jojo. Thank you. What a terrific answer. And thank you for joining us today and telling us about your Young Life ministry in Boulder, Colorado. What a blessing to be able to visit with you today. I hope you'll come back and join us in the future to keep us updated on those kids that you're working so hard to bring into the kingdom. Uh, Jojo, thank you. And God bless you and Amy in your young home and the work that you're doing. And thank y'all for joining us on the Christian Capitalist Podcast today. Please follow us on those social media channels. Take a look at our website. And of course, you can always go to Amazon and buy the book. And just remember, at the Christian Capitalist, the more we make, the more we give.